This is maybe the first year I've had fun drafting tight end, especially these guys at the top, because Sam Laporta looks so damn good. He's my tight end one. Yes, long live Travis Kelce. We'll talk about him in a second. But if you're looking at Laporta, he was just the best rookie tight end in NFL history. I wish I was smart enough to draft him last year. Sadly, I was not, but you live and you learn. Right now, this Detroit Lions offense projects out to be the second highest scoring offense in the NFL. And if you look at how the situation's changed, really, nothing's happened outside of Josh Reynolds leaving. Josh Reynolds leaving may actually open up some more red zone target opportunity for the other options in this offense. So I know a lot of people are coming out screaming that Sam Laporta is going to see some touchdown regression this next year. But the reality of the situation is, I think that, no, there are going to be a lot of touchdowns scored in Detroit. There aren't that many players to score them outside of running backs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. It's not like Jamison Williams is going to step into some massive red zone role. So I think it's a very safe projection. If you look at Laporta and tight ends that had similar age 22 seasons to him, you had Rob Gronkowski. Ignore Jordan Matthews. Jordan Matthews was a wide receiver, transitioned to a tight end. You had Jermichael Finley, Aaron Hernandez, Jeremy Shockley, Jason Witten, Hunter Henry, Todd Heap. And if you look at the average median projection for this following year, you should be expecting about 13, 14 points per game from Sam Laporta this next season. If you add on just the fact that this is a very safe offense to be investing into, I am perfectly fine taking the ascending player at tight end one in Laporta. The question comes down to, where are you actually drafting him? If you're drafting on Underdog, I'm getting a lot of Sam Laporta in round 4 right now. Sam Laporta is my most drafted tight end on Underdog because he goes behind the wide receiver 25, and I think he outscores a bunch of those receivers going ahead of him. In your regular redraft league, Sam Laporta is not making it to round 4. There he's going to go at the end of the second. He's going to go at the beginning of the third. And the overall strategy that I would apply to the tight end position in your regular redraft league is, the more flex spots you have and the more starting lineup requirements that you have at wide receiver, the less valuable tight end's going to be, because they will make up a lower percentage of your overall starting lineup output. However, if you're in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, that's going to be a league where you are highly, highly incentivized to go get an elite tight end, because wide receiver depth is not going to matter, and tight end's going to make up a very high percentage of your starting lineup output. So if you were in a league where you only started 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, I'm taking Sam Laporta at the 2-3 turn. You can see that in my rankings on the site. Now, going over Travis Kelce, clearly not a bad option. Tight end 2, they are going to be in the same tier for me. I mean, I think it's kind of reasonable to have them there. With Kelce, he's been arguably the best tight end in NFL history. You can go back and forth, doesn't matter. He is right there. Now, the issue primarily being is, if you look at Kelce, he is going to be 35 years old this next year. If you look at Travis Kelce, he also declined from 2022 to 2023 and sees additional target competition added into Kansas City. If you look at tight ends that had similar age 34 seasons to him, you had Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, Shannon Sharp, Jason Witten, and Wesley Walls. If you look at what these guys did in their age 35 year, Antonio Gates got worse from 34 to 35. Tony Gonzalez got actually better, which is very interesting. Shannon Sharp got better. Jason Witten got slightly worse. And then Wesley got worse. So what's funny is, if you are looking historically, the tight end position is not one that you are guaranteed to get worse from 34 to 35 years old. So for that reason, even though Kelce only scored, 11.5 points last year, I'm fine drafting him similarly to the same ranges that we were talking about with Sam Laporta. And similarly, this is an offense that should be at the very top of the NFL in total points scored. Right now, sportsbooks have the Chiefs as the 3rd highest scoring offense in the NFL. But like I said, I'd be willing to take these elite tight ends at the 2-3 turn in your regular redraft league if you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. And in Underdog, I am drafting them as much as I can in round 4. Now, let's go over to some other tight ends that I'm drafting quite often. Mark Andrews will be a tier down. Now, with Mark Andrews, yes, this is someone that we've dealt with a considerable amount of injuries through his NFL career. Yes, he is older and maybe not as exciting of the new names as Trey McBride, as Dalton Schultz. If you look at Underdog drafts at the moment, Andrews is going after McBride. You can use our 2024 consensus ADP cheat sheet to see that in all redraft leagues, it's not the same. It's not like Andrews is going after McBride in every single one. Right now, Andrews has an average ADP of about 46 if you are just looking at all platforms. And if you look at Trey McBride, has an average ADP of about 50. So if I'm looking at Andrews, what is very appealing to his profile is the fact that this Ravens team really did nothing to address the second wide receiver issue. This is a team that drafts Devontae Walker on day 3. You bring back Rashad Bateman. Are you that confident that Bateman is a certified? No, he is not. If you look at tight ends that had similar age, 28 seasons to Mark Andrews, the following year at 29 years old, the median projection should be about 13.5 points per game. I think Lamar Jackson is at a very interesting price. I know in underdog drafts, I've taken a lot of Lamar Jackson at the end of the 4th and Mark Andrews at the beginning of the 5th for that stack. If you look at your regular redraft league, however, it looks like Lamar Jackson on average is going to be going in the middle of the 4th round to the beginning of the 4th round. So it may be a little bit tougher to get that stack. Now, I'm willing to go out on a limb, though, and say that if you are drafting in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, and it's a 12-team format, I would not hate the idea of taking both these guys significantly ahead of ADP and taking Lamar at like 35 and Andrews at 37. Now, let's move over to our next guy with Trey McBride. So if you are looking at McBride, this is the ascending option, right? And y'all see in my wide receiver rankings, in my running back rankings, typically we're going to be going with the players that are trending upwards rather than the older guys trending downwards. Tight end is just a little bit of a unique position. So I personally have drafted less Trey McBride than Mark Andrews this year. McBride goes before Andrews in underdog drafts. McBride goes after Andrews in your regular redraft league on Yahoo and ESPN. My thing with McBride is, yes, he was very good at 24 years old this past season, but I believe a large portion of those targets in Arizona will go over to Marvin Harrison Jr. Previously, the only player Trey McBride had to compete with was Hollywood Brown. I personally am of the belief that Hollywood Brown is washed and that Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in will take a significantly higher percentage of this offense. If you look at sportsbooks, currently they are projecting the Cardinals to average about 22.1 points per game. That's not a horrible mark. That's not a great mark. It's going to be about an average to slightly below average offense. They could surprise to the upside for sure, but Kyler's also going to rush the ball as well. So what I'm a little bit worried about is I think McBride possibly sees a small step backwards with his overall target volume with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. But of course, you may actually have, the efficiency going up with Harrison improving the offense. But yeah, I'd be fine drafting McBride at the end of the 4th round, regardless of the format you're playing in. And then Dalton Kincaid will be our next guy here. So y'all know we've done all the historical research to say it's a good idea to draft wide receivers that are in good offenses. Well, Dalton Kincaid isn't exactly a wide receiver, but Dalton Kincaid could potentially be the number 1 target leader for Josh Allen this year, where the Bills are currently projected average 24.9 points per game. If you look at what Kincaid just did at 24 years old, the historical comps at 24 were Jordan Reed, Jason Witten, Austin Hooper, Dalton Schultz, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, John Carlson, Michael Riviera. And if you look at the median projection, it's anywhere from about 12 to 14 points per game this next year. But I would make the argument that the situation has gotten significantly better for Kincaid with the departure of Diggs and with the departure of Gabe Davis. So I am drafting a ton of Dalton Kincaid right now. I'm getting him in round 5 of underdog drafts. And your regular redraft league, you can also get Dalton Kincaid in round 5. And I think he's maybe one of the best valued tight ends that you're going to get this year, regardless of the format that you're playing on. But of course, if you wanted to play in a draft with me, we are actually having flock tournaments every Monday and Thursday night on Underdog Fantasy. Thank you so much for everybody drafting with us. You'll know we're streaming every single night on the live stream, regardless of if it's a flock tournament or not. There are best ball drafts over on Underdog, so there's no time commitment at all during the year. It's how I draft hundreds of teams every offseason. It's how I won $150,000 on Underdog 2 years ago. And if you wanted to draft with me, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. If you use code FLOCK when you sign up to Underdog and make a $10 deposit, you will get my 2024 fantasy football rankings. You will get my 2024 fantasy football draft guide. You will get a 2024 ADP consensus cheat sheet that is updated. All 3 of those are updated every Sunday and sent out to you with the email address you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with. Plus, with code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. Plus, with code FLOCK, because we signed that 3-year extension with Underdog, they're hooking y'all up with a Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for week 1 against the Jets. only for code Flock users. So make sure you take advantage of that. But let's move down a tier. Let's go over to Kyle Pitts. I am going to be completely honest with you. I have lost money drafting Kyle Pitts over the past 2 years. It has been brutal. I have been chasing the dragon because you go back and you look at what this man did in 2021. A tight end that was drafted at 20 years old goes out, puts up arguably the best rookie tight end season in NFL history after being the best tight end prospect of NFL history. It was phenomenal, and he did so in a bad offense. I go out, I draft him in 2022. What does he give you? 6.2 points per game. In 2023, what does he give you? 6.5 points per game. If you look at his yards per route run, they have fallen from 2.1 down to 1.8, down to 1.5 over the past 3 years. Kyle Pitts has been a bad pick in fantasy football. Now, with all that being said, Jonnu Smith goes to Miami. Arthur Smith goes to Pittsburgh. Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta. So this should be a significantly better situation for Pitts, who, like I said previously, I am of the belief that he is the best tight end prospect to ever enter the NFL. If you look at the combination of his athletic profile, his size, his production at Florida, and the fact that no tight end has ever been drafted higher than him. He's still younger than Zay Flowers. He's a year younger than Tank Dell. Tight ends typically take longer to produce. So across the board, I just want to be honest with you and say, I have no idea what to do with this guy. It seems like because his situation's dramatically better this year and all our priors make me want to believe that Kyle Pitts is a good talent, I should be drafting Kyle Pitts. My personal issue is Kyle Pitts goes pretty much neck and neck with Dalton Kincaid. And I would way rather just draft Dalton Kincaid in round 5 than Kyle Pitts, even if Kyle Pitts were to fall to round 6. So you can draft Pitts if you want. I think Pitts has the upside to be a great pick. I don't know if I'm just biased and I've been burned too many times, but I would rather just pay an extra round in price to go get someone like Kincaid, to go get someone like Andrews, to go get someone like McBride. Now, somebody that's in the same tier that could move up. George Kittle could jump around if Brandon Ayuk does get dealt out of San Francisco. Obviously, this currently projects to be the best offense in the NFL in 2024, according to sportsbooks. George Kittle, while he seems like he fell off last year, the man averaged 2.5 yards per route run. George Kittle is still as good as he ever was. He's a little bit older going into his age 31 season. If you look at tight ends that had similar age 30 years to Kittle, you had Delaney Walker, Tony Gonzalez, Owen Daniels, Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Heath Miller. The median projection you should expect for a tight end with this profile going into 31 years old is 13 points per game. The entire question comes down to, does Brandon Ayuk leave? Because if Ayuk leaves and you get additional target volume going over to George Kittle, Kittle could absolutely smash this ranking, and instead he should probably be up with the Mark Andrews range. If Ayuk stays, all of a sudden you have Ayuk, you have Debo, they just take Sticky Ricky round 1, you have McCaffrey, so there's a lot of target competition. Kittle probably is one of those examples because he's going to give you a couple weeks with 1 to 3 fantasy points and then a couple weeks with 30 plus. That he probably makes a little more sense in best ball drafts than your regular ESPN redraft league, unless Ayuk is dealt, because if Ayuk is dealt, I think the target share is going to go significantly higher, and then he could be a little more of a consistent option. Our next guy will be Evan Ingram. If you look at Ingram, he has improved for 3 straight seasons now, from 5.3 to 8.3 to 10.2 points per game. If you look at his intended air yards per game from 28 to 36 to 43, if you look at his yards per route run from 1 to 1.6 to 1.7, and what's very interesting with Evan Ingram is Zay Jones is gone. Calvin Ridley is gone. So you have Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram here, really with the only guys that have rapport with Trevor Lawrence. Now, of course, you do bring in additional wide receiver competition in the form of Brian Thomas, in the form of Gabe Davis. But I mean, right now, what's very interesting is if you look at Evan Ingram's comps at 29 years old this past year, he had a similar season to Antonio Gates, Dallas Clark, Travis Kelce, Jason Witten, Greg Olsen, Tony Gonzalez, George Kittle, Darren Waller, Zach Ertz. And the median projection for the following year from a points per game perspective should be about 14.5 points per contest. I think this Jacksonville Jaguars offense has the upside to be better this year than they were the year prior. So honestly, even looking at Evan Ingram with this ranking, I could be too low on him. I haven't drafted a lot of him just because right now he goes to the 6-7 turn in underdog drafts. And like I said, I just really love the price point of Mark Andrews. I really love the price point of Dalton Schultz. If you're in your regular redraft league looking at the gap between these guys, Evan Ingram is being drafted on average at about pick 71. So in your regular redraft league, I am probably just going to be willing to pay up a little bit more to get Dalton Schultz, who I think has less target competition in a better offense. But Ingram in his own right still looks great. Now let's go over to our next guy. This is going to be Jake Ferguson. I know it doesn't really matter if I think Jake Ferguson's a great NFL talent or not. To be honest with you, I don't think Ferguson is a great talent. But the thing is, his situation could not be better. Right now, the Dallas Cowboys offense is coming off of the most points scored in the league last year. While yes, this offense projects out to get slightly worse in 2024, they still project to be a borderline top 5 offense in the NFL. If you look at Brandon Cooks from any advanced metrics standpoint, I mean, especially look at his yards per route run, it looks like Brandon Cooks is just straight up washed. CeeDee Lamb's going to dominate targets here in this offense, but Jake Ferguson could easily be the second option in a very high scoring offense at tight end this year for a team that has really no wide receiver depth. So I'm not a big Jake Ferguson fan from a talent perspective, but it is extremely difficult to ignore how good his situation is this next year. Now, going over to David Njoku, this is where we get to more so the discount tight end options. Njoku has also improved for 3 years straight, from 5.6 to 8.1 to 10 points per game this past year. Now, what's a little bit concerning with Njoku is I think a lot of this production came from when Joe Flacco was under center. If you look at the splits with and without Deshaun Watson for Njoku, Deshaun Watson for this overall passing offense over the past 2 seasons has been a significantly worse option than what you saw from Joe Flacco a year ago. Not only do you have potentially the downgrade in overall offensive volume compared to what we saw last season, but you also add in another viable target in the form of Jerry Jeudy, who Jerry Jeudy's getting paid a ridiculous $40+ million at this point, signing that new deal. So it looks like they are planning on using Jeudy as a wide receiver too, which you can make the argument they potentially didn't really have a wide receiver too last year. So David Njoku stepped into that role. So Njoku's historical comps at this age actually look great. And like I said, he has been improving. I'm just personally a little concerned that the situation looks worse this next year. Now, I know that we have had some people coming out making the claim that Brock Bowers is the best tight end prospect of all time. Y'all have short-term memories. I am telling you right now, Bowers is not a better prospect than Kyle Pitts. Bowers could be a better NFL player. Of course, their prospect profiles don't matter that much at this point, but that's all besides the point. With Bowers, phenomenal tight end prospect. He's such a playmaker that the man had 5 rushing touchdowns at Georgia. He had literally 5 rushing touchdowns, almost 200 rushing yards playing tight ends. The thing is, you're going to what projects to be a borderline bottom 5 offense in the NFL. Right now, the Raiders are projected to be the 6th worst offense in the league, and Devontae Adams is going to dominate the targets here. So at best, you're the second option in a very bad Raiders offense. So you probably do need to be a little bit worried from that front. Now, going over to our next player, I drafted a lot of Dallas Goedert last year, and trust me, I paid the price for it. I mean, instead of me taking Sam Laporta 5-6 rounds later, I was the idiot drafting Goedert, who gave us 7.6 fantasy points per game. Goddard's gotten worse for 3 straight seasons now with his yards per route run, going from 2.6 down to 2.1, down to 1.5. You have Devonta Smith seemingly stepping into his prime. Goedert at best is the 3rd option in this offense. I think if you are taking Dallas Goedert, everything essentially comes down to what your personal expectations are for Jalen Hurts in this offense this next season. If you think that Jalen Hurts is going to come back and get to where he was in 2022, and you think that Jalen Hurts was really just maybe injured last year, and that's why we saw the fall off from the Philadelphia Eagles in the second half of the season, I can buy that story. But when you're going to be the 3rd offensive option at best in Philadelphia, we really need to make sure that this is going to be an elite offense if you're drafting Goedert. Now, going down to our next guy, this is about the tier that you get to in drafts Where in your regular redraft league, I think you're maybe just better off waiting until the very end and making plays off the waiver wire. Now, in your underdog draft, you're going to be drafting 2 to 3 tight ends. It's still very important to get this tier correct, but these are about like the last few tight ends that I think would be exciting to draft. Cole Kmet's gotten better for 3 straight seasons now, from 5.4 to 7.2 to 8.5 points per game. And if you're also looking at Cole Kmet, this will be the best quarterback play that he's had in his entire NFL career. However, now Kmet not only has to deal with DJ Moore, but Cole Kmet also has to deal with Keenan Allen, and Cole Kmet also has to deal with Rome Odunze. So Kmet has been an improving tight end. He's only going to be 25 this next year. He's presumably just getting ready to step into his prime. He has an upgrade when it comes to his overall offense. The target share should just come down, though. Then our next guy we're going to be looking at will be Dalton Schultz. Schultz should also be playing in an offense that I expect to be better this next year. I think the Texans are going to be even better in 2024 than they were in 2023 based off natural progression that you get for CJ Stroud going into his second season. And not only natural progression, but also the fact that you add in Stephon Diggs. But with the addition of Stephon Diggs, with a healthy Tank Dell, I think you find yourself in a position, if you're Dalton Schultz, where at best you're the 4th option in this offense. So in best ball, that can be exciting. I just don't see the upside for Schultz to turn into like an every week starter. Now going over to Pat Freiermuth, trust me, I've drafted my fair share of Freiermuth in the past. Did not work out for me. Paid the price. Now you have Deontay Johnson gone. You possibly also have a quarterback upgrade with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. So if we're looking at this for Freiermuth, I'm going to be giving Pat Freiermuth the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to be ranking him much higher than where he finished last year. Last year, 5.1 points per game. It was atrocious. But possibly a higher target share, possibly better quarterback play, I think does make Freiermuth a little more appealing. But like I said, this is the range where you're taking someone and you're hoping that, maybe you can start him at the beginning of the year, pick up someone off waivers. TJ Hockenson's a very interesting case. TJ Hockenson, 11.4 points per game this past season. If TJ Hockenson was fully healthy, if Kirk Cousins was still here, I personally would be ranking TJ Hockenson higher than Pat Freiermuth, higher than Dalton Schultz, higher than Cole Kmet, higher than Dallas Goedert, higher than Brock Bowers, higher than David Njoku, higher than Jake Ferguson, higher than Evan Ingram, higher than George Kittle, higher than Kyle Pitts. I would be ranking Hockenson alongside Andrews, McBride, and Kincaid. Now the issue is TJ Hockenson is not fully healthy. TJ Hockenson has obliterated his knee, and this should be a much worse offense with no Kirk Cousins this next year. You have serious target competition in the form of Justin Jefferson as well as Jordan Addison. I think Hockenson, it's going to be very dependent on where you're drafting. If you're in your regular redraft league and you're going to be able to take TJ Hockenson and throw him on your IR at the beginning of the season, TJ Hockenson could be a very strong selection because he's not going to be wasting a roster spot for you. And hopefully by the time he is fully healthy, he comes in and he absolutely crushes. If you're in an underdog best ball draft where you are highly incentivized to chase upside for weeks 15, 16, 17, I think that TJ Hockenson could be a phenomenal pick for you because at the end of the year, he could have a massive ceiling. However, if you're in a shallow redraft format, you take TJ Hockenson, and if he goes on the PUP, if your league settings don't allow you to put him on the IR, then he's almost a wasted pick because you're just going to be wasting a roster spot at the beginning of the season and really not going to be able to make waiver wire moves and try to find the next Kyren Williams and try to find the next Puka. So I think Hockenson with this ranking, it's very conservative. Depending on your platform, if you can just throw him on the IR, you can potentially move him up. But obviously, it's just such a tough spot coming off this serious injury. Luke Musgrave will be our next guy. With Musgrave, very good offense, decent rookie showing. The primary concern is you have Tucker Kraft, you have Jaden Reed, you have Romeo Doubs, you have Dontavian Wicks, you have Josh Jacobs. There are so many players that may touch the ball in Green Bay. So I think Musgrave's a perfect example of like a decent best ball option because if he scores a random touchdown, then Cooley goes into your lineup. But I don't know outside of that. And then looking at some of these other tight ends, these are going to be guys that like Hunter Henry, Ben Sinnott, Cade Otton, Isaiah Likely, and Noah Fant, Tyler Conklin. We'll throw Juwan Johnson, Jonnu Smith all in here. All these guys are pretty much just options for best ball drafts. if you are looking at some of these names in particular, if you were taking someone in your redraft league just to start them at the beginning of the season and then hopefully find someone off the waiver, I would definitely prefer taking the veterans, guys like Hunter Henry, guys like Cade Otton, guys like Noah Fant that could potentially be starts week 1. That's what I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for guys to help us week 1. If you're in an underdog best ball tournament, or if you have a super deep bench, then maybe there you go ahead and you take Ben Sinnott. But the issue is in your ESPN draft, if you have like 7 bench spots and you take Ben Sinnott, what could potentially happen to make that work out for you? Even if he's like the tight end 8 for the second half of the year, if you had to roster him in that shallow format through the first half of the season, he's definitely going to hurt you more than he's going to help you just taking up that roster spot. So I definitely recommend you probably just go with one of the elite tight ends this year. Don't roster 2, just take 1. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And of course, if you want to join a draft with us, we are drafting every single night in this live stream on Underdog Fantasy, where we've drafted every day for years. Best ball, no time commitment during the year. It's how I draft hundreds of teams, how I made $150,000 on Underdog 2 years ago. And if you wanted to draft with us, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. Code FLOCK will get you hooked up every Sunday with my most up-to-date rankings, updated draft guide, updated ADP consensus cheat sheet. And you would get a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. Plus, you would get that special Christian McCaffrey pick'em, more than less than half a total yard, only for Flock users week 1. But I think that's all I have for you, other than Austin, Texas. We have a meetup on August 22nd, flockfantasy.store. You better come if you were close to Austin. Should be a ton of fun. I'll be there. A ton of other fantasy football YouTubers will be there. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And really hope we get to see you out with the live stream sometime soon.